they reach the end point of nirvana. All the Buddhas who dwell in the three times also manifestly completely awaken to unsurpassable, perfect, complete enlightenment in reliance on the perfection of wisdom. And therefore, the mantra of the perfection of wisdom, the mantra of great knowledge, the unsurpassed mantra, the mantra equal to the unequal, the mantra that thoroughly pacifies all suffering, should be known as the truth, sincere, false. The mantra of the perfection of wisdom is declared Taya ta gate gate paragate parasam gate bodhisoha. Shariputra, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, should train in the profound perfection of wisdom like that. Then the Bhagavan arose from that concentration and commended the Bodhisattva Arya Avalokiteshvara, saying, well, son of the lineage. It is like that, it is like that. One should practice the profound perfection of wisdom, just as you have indicated. Even the Tathagatas rejoiced. The Bhagavan, having thus spoken, the Venerable Shariputra, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva Arya Avalokiteshvara, those surrounding in their entirety, along with the world of gods, humans, asuras, and Gandharvas, were overjoyed and highly praised that spoken by the Bhagavan. To page 25 for the short mandala. Sashi
Pashi Jushe Metatan Rira Tenji Nite Kempati Sanje Shinte Mite Uwaji Troko Nanda Chima Chopa Jetsalama Tampa Chinachi Chekyo Kala Chense Chichene Chittara Sambe Tushe Semala
Zabge Choki Chapa Baptuso Idam Guru Ratna Mandala Kamniriyachaya
Sanje Jadanza Janana Janjo Bada Dani Jazan Dage Chujin Jive Sanam Je Dola Benje Sanje Dovara Sanje Jadanza Janana Janjo Bada Dani Jazan Dage Chujin Jive Sanam Je Dola Benje Sanje Dovara Sanje Jadanza Janana Janjo Bada Dani Jazan Dage Chujin Jive Sonam Ji Dola Benje Sanje Dobora Sho Konga de Zenye Zeve Da Danje Bawanyi Teme Shinen Den Zeve Godam De La Chazel Donye Nyenje Zende Jeve Na Shiji Sunze Kanshi Den Jagar Chana Bima Den Zenge Zola Zola De Zo Shinde Lundu Sho Bande De Lama Ramo Jen Dage Chiru Bende De Shone Gade Jembe Gune Jizon De Gozon To Jinguru Zede Su 전조선저는 뭐지 마제바나 유지 제와냐 바메와냐 원냐 원데 베고라 쇼 아이 다음도 꿀롱 검지 야 다디링 믹세 투즈 제와지 사법 투지 투즈 상보로
야
딜레야 아니 추 문도진지 추 근데 투기 총화돼야 아니 라니 지고 둔다 마에 봐 라는 거딘 치외 마게 심지 탐제기 치데 네 다다다 된데 두비야 체되는 주니야 된 라니 지부터 남아야 봐 심지 시엔테다 탐제를 펜배치데 산제 고마토레 산제 고마토라 남줄라 깨오레 남줄라 깨와라 공벌 셰월 퇴오레 디지도 퇴고요 텐제아도스 네 고노 찬주심 세야고 싶다셔스
assuming a correct intention on this special day, the descent from Tushita heaven. In that context, being able to hear the Dharma, the ornament of clear realization, but not just for oneself, but the intention to accomplish the welfare of all kind mother sentient beings. And in order to do that, one has to reach the perfect complete goal, the goal of perfect complete Buddhahood. In order to do that, one has to generate a valid path. In order to generate a path, one has to know. In order to know also, one has to meditate and then hear. So that hearing should be with a bodhicitta mind, of others in mind.
아야 다 이세 가와금라 팅팅데지 야 제자지 모든 지 특이 총어디 개와상고 인 텐로
Rejoicing that one has the opportunity to listen to such a profound Dharma. Fortunate to do so.
아야 다 기능에디 제시도 두시 겸나 타밥 뒤지나 애들어 그냥 저런서 뭐뭐 코녀에 zan다 덤바 좀 된대 제와 지로디 타밥 뒤지나 들어 제진직 레스로
I'd like to say a few words about the descent from Tushi to heaven. Lord Buddha, Sangye Chamdende, amongst the deeds he showed, this was one.
좀 된대 구퉁네 배제 dunda직 제라니 юм디 총서로 юм dunda직 제라 좀 된대 총니 dunda직 제라 юм 공부저다 공부저네니 좀 된대 그 소무서로 왔다 딕스되어 왔다 юм 담에 마사티 아작스되어 와 텔리디 юм나고 아마운네디 dunda직 제라 공부저 되네 숨지자 숨내르지 숨지자 숨내르지네 좀 된대 상제네 당 아마 가와지도 아메게 틸렌스고도 오스라 아닐 하이네 숨지자 좀 내려 겨울라 근데라 아마 틸렌스고다 밤에 틸렌스 지단도 심지에 담제랑 마치뇨 그래들래 뭐서 다 대화 숙침부 쉬어지위자 딜 펜도 체원데나 네 남산 배드부드 미기 여러와 대화 여바디 대화무스 대화무스 숙침부 여바디 여러와 아니 제자디 인디네 숨지자 좀 내려야 폐 얘래야 이제 다와 숨지 쉬어와 야네 예 쇼인 소래 다와 숨 양아지니 켈라데 다와 숨 마란저데 미기 다와 숨 아니 얘라 슈제 단당서 티진스 좀 돈발래야도 이게 좀 된대게 юм라 숨신 요거 저거로
A month after Lord Shakyamuni Buddha was born, Buddha's Holy Mother passed away. And after that, Lord Buddha was cared for by like another mother, I guess you could say. I can't recall the name. But certainly Lord Buddha's mother passed away and was born in the gods of the 33. And upon obtaining to the state of Buddhahood, Lord Buddha looked around and saw with that ability where the mother had been born. And in order to repay that kindness, Lord Buddha was born there. Of course, in general, all sentient beings are kind. All kind mother sentient beings are so. But here particularly, there was a very strong connect, a very direct connect, and that needed to be repaid. So Lord Buddha went to that realm of the gods of the 33 for 3 months, what we sometimes commonly know as the 3 months rains retreat, and taught there. Now, that would have been 3 human months of our human months, but as we know the Mahayana precepts today, that came from that time of Lord Buddha teaching his mother.
어디네 하나 도마 좀 내네 이 진죽도서 네 잠로 최고로 했어야 돼 어디도 링시로 어디도 청소하네 좀 된데 숨지서 숨을 해내려 슈드 아니 하지 그런 하드즈 dundajigijila jawa kawalemi singiyore ro koran da jil jawa kawalengu yemi singiyore ji ani leg to pshen gor jawa jema de da kawalengu milalengu tundulengu nyawa jil jige kawajige ma go gor an hajige jawa di phagwala jawalengu zra phagwa koran jawa jema di phagwa 하디 배 장마 쇼로
음.
파고 소부 쇼로다 안 동에 쇼요라 근데 파고에 동에들 직제 파고에 은 좀된데 뒤뒤대 유비 인자 숨지서 좀 맨날 유비 인자 아니 좀된데 잠로 제도 하다 나 잠로 지가 문해기 잠로 제도 하다
Yeah.
아니 하디 체표니 밀레 겨울엔 잠로 제워디 도게 네 미다 좀된데 난 저 차비 인자 미베 총바 추구지기 불러 겨울나 근데 좀된데 제수랍도 중 아니 다좀 같이 세들라 산제 이고 마토로 제가 드네 좀된데다 게 진주도 주다 이마 잠도 쳐고 스캐나서 잠도 쳐베이나 근데 겨와치망에서 제가 말을 스캐나서 이게 나디 통소 다디 줍제디 통소 잠도 쳐올 때네 고 파고라 마제지 밀레 겨울len서 세상 전한서 잠도 쳐고 그래서 이제 숨지 숨을 했네네 이제 최디니니디 벼 나란서 마치야디 좀 되게 숨지서 숨나 피 따진데 아 단도 죽도도가 돼 숨지서 숨을 해는 송이소라 죽도 누가도 나가서 누가 뜬거도 똑바지야 누가디 죽도 누가디 지난 좀 되게 의 죽도르데 송사디 숨지서 숨만에 하일 송이시 소라 그래서 지난 하야네를 송이신 요그 최 알아서 냠내 지기 요르다던데 야 오다라야
And also the refuge which had been given to humans in this world at that stage in the God realms was given in terms of there was a God in that realm, and it is known that before death of the gods, a week before, in fact, it is likely they will clearly perceive the future rebirth, be it human, animal, hell, whatever. In that case, there was one particular god in the vicinity where Lord Buddha was in that realm that saw that they were going to be born as a pig. Big difference, gods being extremely clean, pigs being extremely dirty, couldn't bear to see the suffering of being born as a pig, and therefore sought protection from Buddha himself, who was there. That's really seeking protection, isn't it? Literally. So which Buddha gave that God refuge as a connect, as a direct connection, affording direct protection, the result of which the God was born in a rich family, and in that life latterly became ordained and got the fruit of an arhat. So Lord Buddha said then, if you are in fact a disciple of mine, this action validates the fact that if you take refuge, you will not go to the lower realms. That very Dharma was taught in that very place to show that very thing, that very protection. So then, and also we commonly know that Lord Buddha had a suktoro agisla, crown protrusion, which could be perceived by, I guess, others if they were Buddhas. But anyway, that is said to have gone to that realm, and the teaching took place like that. But we get to practice now. We're fortunate.
테네 다 다왔음 아니 와 달하라 슈고인자 네 겨우 수진님 보게 다 좀 된데 겨우 수진님 모두 미세 좀 된데 레드 더 쉬고 연주 겨우 수진님 보게 최신조 좀 더트는 친조 멍부여라 겨우 수진님 모두 최연 진다 시제로 아니 진다 인자 좀 된데 단 툭파지 제가 쉬고요 인자 아니 겨우 수진면 당아 덤바 튕기도 쓰러 아니 멍게 불렀다 그치 지난 덤바마 된데 슈가 들어치시 아니 몽게부는 주두시오 용거래. 숨지서서 맨날이야 페이지. 좀 된데라다. 교수진마다 미유기 두자저네 좀 된데 마페로시시기도. 좀 된데 드링님한테 편도급에 생유신이니까 돼마 잠불렌데 페 잠불렌은 마 피디네 함망고시 마 수마치가 님도 용데 미망고시지게. 좀 된데 코로예요나 함망고시지 마 미유레 페요 된데 달하 잠불렌은 파베용 것도 합법 투진에서 합법용 것도 미드죠. 달하 망고 쉬어지면서 잠불렌은 파베용 것도 안데 건서 통구 여러 와제선 데인다네 합법 투진 아니 대체네 로다르시딜레 투진게 쳐바치야 돼 두스체네 네 달성 레스라
숙치닝보 there was a king in India, Magadha. This king had tremendous faith in the Dharma and, was responsible for sponsoring a lot of the Dharma teachings, was very interested in Dharma discourses, questions and answers. Had a great affection coming from the king to Buddha and from Buddha to the king, and asked, Mangipu, the Buddha's close disciple. Mongolipu. What's the name? How do you say that name?
Sharipu Mongali.
Mutkalyayana.
Mongol Pulanadi. Mangipu.
That one.
That one? Yes, yeah, that one.
Who was adept in miracles, to go at the king's behest to request Buddha to come back down where he was in the gods of the 33, specifically to come back down and teach. At that time, Buddha was teaching. So on that certain date, this date, Buddha descended, and Buddha came down back to this world with a lot of gods in his retinue descending together, and the gods were seen to come down with the Buddha, which is why to this day it's called Lababduchen, which means the descent from Tushita, like with the gods. So that's known like that to this day.
사부시부지 요ዛ니 페조 라테오 직 펜도잖아 펜디 람산 펜도 토두고 있어와 저와 요새들 아니 펜도잖아 두고 있으리 다디 단다양 다가라리 진짜 몽골부디 몽골부다야 다좀부차 또고도 차되네 저 다좀부 톱사하네 되게 산제요 말에 다좀부 톱사네 몽골부다 몽골부다다 숨지서 주주쇼요다 단다 기생원도 주주지 강박에 셴바 어디 직내직도 내 폰에 둬야 돼 답 주주다 베디 몽골부터 좀 된데도 냠만하시 위해서 거다 주주 쉬어서다 주주라 베디 주주라 가지고 쉬어서 거다 아니 잠블링디 왕게 제베 잠블링디 직신은 인죠 잠블링디 왕데 체네 아니 하다 하마인다 숨지다 숨다 아니 제 미다 아니 냐와다 이다도 튼도다 또 찾아라 몽골 부거랑게 아마세가 돌아 다 아마준 니요 말 아메 겨워도 가을래메 좀 된데라 간디슈다 아마 가와진 질 당아준 니고만 잠블링데 하라 친 상말라 친 세가로 준 니마서 아마 니고면도 좀 된데 저는 아마디 아니 창조 외세진기 직된지 감신다게 냐와를 제셨어 직된 감신다게 냐와 제가 먼저 딜라 도리도 직된 감되게 도리도 직체 야 직된 감신다라 도리도 다 직된 감 타예바디 남보산제 두고요 근데 몽골부게 주주다
알레
로토고요 말데 산제게 다시 유타르면 온게 미셰바스다들 미셰바 맞아 미셰바데 유타르면 온게 미셰바데 아니 다좀바레데레 유타르면 온지 디미셰바데 제가 다좀바레 미셰바 예베 줌데 디두고요 아니 창조의 세신이 직된지 감라 냐와를 계셨을 저런 로토고 말해 아니 아메체도 아니 최대한 샹스 최대한 먹고 싶어 샹로 아니 최대한 샹나 아니 아마냐와를 야 타제 미를 수 교련 그랬지 그래서 최대한 내 군자 샹야도 게자 쉬우지 사기여로 봐 다도 다 낭배 중 시자다 낭배 추 냠련 존연지 디게 dombe 좀 된대지 아니 송도도 다 참아라 왕들와 개와사 소나사베 개와 아니 개외도 대화디 연구여와 대다 ngoyni 주단 tumcha로 거잖아 디저베 도저다 된도 스마타 로기로 따데데 제가 지수수 똑바로 니도 람산 아메 틸렌셔야디 팅기도 와디 아마데 직자 전부 쉬어지 예도 마다 이 디앙라서 스튜디오네지 말람로디 세디게 밤에 저외심지 탐제스 자야데 개천부 있으래로
This is a very strong piece of advice that we can take from this account, that Lord Buddha seems to be showing the kindness of the parents this life, and if one can directly benefit the parents in this life, do it. The story of Mongolipu, that he became an arhat and was able to go to that God realm of the 30th. All right, that arhat.
Monkey, Mongolian possess. Mongolian, I'm not teasing you. It's okay.
No problem.
No
The fact
problem.
Murray, what's the name?
Murray.
Mongoliana.
Yeah, a little bit different now.
That sounds strong. Okay. So the miracles were, a few weeks ago we looked at this.
2 weeks ago. Yeah, few days ago. A few weeks ago.
Weeks ago, we looked at the limb of miracles.
Yeah.
And with those miraculous limbs of legs, one can go from place to place. Now, that one,
yeah.
he was so good in miracles, almost equal to Buddha as adept. But, that Arhat was concerned as to where the mother, because the mother had passed away, where the mother had been reborn. So sought the mother's whereabouts everywhere in all of the realms, the gods, the devas, the demigods, the humans, animals, realms, sought, but could not find. And, sought in the god realms everywhere. But after such, Lord Buddha could see that his mother had been born in another world system, in a particular type of hell. Okay, so in this world system, there are 6 realms of beings. But, there are also countless other world systems with 6 realms of beings. And one of the qualities of a Buddha is that the Buddha can directly see each and every of those universes with all the realms therein. This is a particular quality of Buddha's omniscience. But the Arhats have a particular type of miracles they can manifest, but it is obstructed by a type of limited movement. So therefore, Lord Buddha instructed him, who is called, thank you, that you should, you should build a stupa to, at the behest of your mother, to liberate her from that world system and that hell where she is. And that was done, and she quickly again got the body of a human. What this is saying is that the tremendous power of building stupas, statues, and the vast merit that is accrued from that, of course, can be seen with the merits can be seen with the direct cognition of the Buddhas, but also in line with this case, what the history is telling us is that the kindness of the mother is so strong that insights come from being able to directly repay that kindness. So therefore, in general, it's good to also think of the kindness of sentient beings generically as well, but specifically mother of this life to repay.
인데 푸르고 와디 단다디 간저 셔러닝 거는 아니 gelonji 게던 라좀 gelon베 자라망고 자구 흥부를라 최년도 와라
야
제가 자구 흥부를라 딘데 골론 자다딘데 추스케 민도 와라 제가 주주지 dob지 다 파나네 최년베 버와
야
제가 딘데로 직전에 다 찬에다 두저 두야도 와라 찍들이 니네 다좀부터도 다 주르지 강바 탑고 여러와 주르 강바 탑나 아니 다 필초다 야 필마 필와
야
아니야 동이 도베 다 제운도야 주르를 파야 필토다 근데 세월라 주야도 용고도 와데 데 동이 도베 다디 주르랑스나 단기기데 뭐시기 도고 아니 수보디 춘주 차야단 교보도 되야단데 소두고 열어
Mm.
야 돈이 돼야 돼야 그 리얼리티 시제 리얼리티는 주주고요 다데 주주때 베데 지난다 추추주다 그래다 딜 돈 배낭 가서 단다 딜 가서 주고 말아
Yeah.
돈이 더더나 주고드네 주 대갈은 딜 동자 열어
Okay.
동자 여스디는 주고라 다간다 먼저 통 단다 베 딥제 통고요 말아 돈이 더 사되네 디 통고 열어 봐 네 디나라 제가 주고 제가 별로 저랑서 공부 망고를 돈이 망고 그네 타가는 주구주셔다 강배 강제 샤와다 근데 망고 열다 망고 제 열다 로
Yeah.
주다 된jo데 망고 열
So our hearts that have these abilities of movement in terms of miraculous ability, in the Heart Sutra, we know that hundreds, if not thousands, of superiors were present in a tiny space in Rajgir. How is it that they were able to fit in that tiny space? They were kind of like in the atmosphere and were able to listen. That's one thing. So that ability to be able to manifest in space, but also having accomplished those legs of miracles we mentioned, there is that ability to move up and down and do these various emanations. But secondly, there is the fact that they would have gotten the wisdom consciousness realizing the lack of intrinsic nature of all phenomena vis-a-vis realized emptiness. And with that, they could do things like go in space into spaces like below ground. You know, and then that other miraculous thing where you make the small big, or you move in space, and that's another thing. But what this wisdom consciousness realizing reality is talking about, that type of miracle, is seeing the way phenomena is. So for example, this cup, if you have realized emptiness, the cup has space particles within it, or space within it. So the finger can go through the cup, for example. We cannot do that because our minds are obscured by ignorance. But those who have seen reality can do that. And those of you who have been to Tibet to visit some of the caves might have seen imprints of the great adepts, footprints and so forth, handprints in the rocks. That's the city of that.
알하버데 나기 도버제나 줄루 톰나 아니 수라과다 되메레 되네 베 주마데베 난돈 주마데베스바 아니 베데다 멘다 직차자다 베데코나 아니 베 점블링 신다제 레자다
Not only that, but of course, if you've got from a tantric perspective illusory body, then everything is going to appear nangtong gyumataba, which means appearance empty, illusory like quality. Then you can go anywhere.
제가 단다디 겨우 우다야나 세야지로 겨우 우다야나 세니디 난갈래야 또 다좀바도 좀 된데 추송살라 피두고 있어라 파 피르 추 피르 겨우 우다인데 미 천자된 대로 미마잉이 된데 도다 남로 피두고도 스도 가래스라 제가 쉬우던데 쇼괴 파 남로 피두고 건다 추두고도 돼 가래스 다좀바도 다 똑바 나고 똑바 진저도 푸르니 좀 된데서 추연이가 누구 있어라
Yeah.
아니 다디 좀 된데서 추연이가 누구요 그래서 그래서 데 동대로 어떤데 개 말해 데 미래에서 더 상마베 좀 된데 진주 추연이네 진이 똑같은 똑같은 것이 나는 필요고 그래서 아니 겨우래 당아 좀 된데 제가 도도 좀 된데 제제 당아 되전 아니 아 데저 주주드야 다 남을 프리야도 간데 중을 해서 되네 두저 되네 나기 똑같이벌 되네 똑같 소지네 프리야르다 주주드야도 많지 나가 똑같이네 제데 망아 있어요 제가니 나기 투어틀린 첸다 나기 당보지 최송로 지에서 순위 찍대 여우래는 스니들에도 미 숙제나 미기 뒤자 나야 송로 지에서 순위디 여우래는 스니들에도
human form.
네 하이든지 차노도 제다 두저바다 와 하이든지 다 차노도 제들이야 전주 신배 명제지 여다 샤다 샤고래 이내다 두즈베 투무 마인베 전주 신바든데 와 제단도즈 다단
Okay.
용다게 겨우 우라야나디 닝아게 야다 nga demba di sungro cheese ne che dinde sungro cheese konan la mise leg de wa shu chmo yo inza andela ji tugo danda de ne che nga dan de yo mang we chi gyo de na sungbre sung che da yang ka che da ju du nam la khandes tu re ro chom de nam la khandes tu re sa de che da tokwa che we che yo ba di she gi yor nge tokwa che na priya yo ba di she gi yor
At that time in India, King Udayana would see beings flying in space and would wonder, that's strange. What are those kind of beings doing flying in space, coming in the morning and then going back at night? Are they some kind of demon? He thought. But then someone commented to him, no, those are not demons, those are arhats that are going to attend the teaching of Buddha, and they are doing that out of their insights. So once one has that insight, one can fly. So then the king thought to meet the Buddha in that regard and request teachings around that ability around those cities. So then it became commonly known that mostly those types of cities are a result of tantric practices, not all, but mostly. And, it was really this king Udayana, in that common perspective, who first requested Lord Buddha to teach Tantra. Of course, in an uncommon perspective, the first requests were coming from Vajrapani, who was, a deity. But, bodhisattva deity. There were other bodhisattvas, but Vajrapani was uncommon again. But coming back to King Udayana, he said to Buddha, can you teach these, how do you fly in space? And Buddha said, well, it's actually insights, and you have to get the cities. And so therefore, it's commonly known that the first requests for tantric teachings come from that king. Right. And there were people who observed yogis flying in Tibet. Yes. Those who have read the life story of Milarepa, seeing in that text that he got completion stage tantra and was able to fly into the clouds, fly into space. Yep. Yeah. Hako.
Aruradi ta jagal me she yo mare de nimajig nal male nana ne gegen de tondo res nimajig nal na gegen de tsepa mende tu mai be chi gen de job to res ne gegen de ta jananzo su gidukjig zuru de je jagal lenga jusro pembone de namdo yo maro 아니 기루신다 수직이 카타도 있어 말아. 안당기데 칼라스 드니 님중데 nga 도스. 아니 네 쇼게 바진 자가네 네메 아르르 렌제. 건다 님무 마시건라 네 게겐 멘체제 자가네 레르. 어디서 상마? 주르기다. 도과 nga 도과 통보 유에 따딩게 근데 시기 요레스로.
In Tibet, in Pempo, Mingi, Kurang Ming. Druptok Chishid.
The Mings mixer tanda de Jevu tanda de Zuru la Zuru Sajdo. Digi youngs de young Sidodre.
Yeah. So there are incarnations of this adept at current, but previously in Pempo, I think where Gisla is from, this great master had 6 disciples around him. Some of the older ones were known, some of these older disciples were known to have this ability to perform siddhis, miracles. And there was an old servant of the teacher, very humble old type. And the others thought, oh, he's the least adept in miracles. A kind of quiet disposition, made tea and food for this great meditator. But at one stage, the great meditator, the teacher, fell sick. And it came to be that unless he got a certain type of medicine from India called arura, he would pass away, have like untimely death. So then it was asked amongst the disciples, who amongst us has the ability to go to India and back to get this medicine? In those days, there were no planes, right? So they would have to, because it was said that if the arura medicine wasn't gotten in one day, the teacher would pass. So therefore, the humble attendant of the teacher came forward and said, I'll go. And so he left in the morning and came back before sunset with that medicine. And the ability to do that, it seems, was coming from the tantric siddhis. Yeah.
Digung angong sin dubdo da yongdara bachi digung angong rumbachi skedara shi yore. A re rumbachi de angong na sha samgang na la pedwa. An pedu zangala da kurang kege yo marwa. Ani di kaza angong rumbachi da nga rumbachi la da puyara wa chige yo marwa. Rumbachi kina karichugi imba, karishigi imba se ya shuidwa rin gyabule ya. Re rumbachi gyabudi 제가 때문에 태세 뭐뭐 거이스 라사고 뭐뭐 거이스 아니 까마치 고아 까마가지 띠시고 아까 띠시고 아스다 까마가지 고 아스 다른 고치로를 마지도 까마가지 정나라 태세 상황이 뭐뭐 벨레드나는 킬리도 베는 대궁 풀리바도냐 대궁네 해서라 모더단도나 배제 뭐마이나 추주 숨제 니제고 그래 다 딩산데 모더 저거로나 주주직 들어오래. 그러나 가망하나는 뭐뭐 체질래래 제가. 어두즈래 똑바 주주 똑바 여와도 땡겨요. 뭐뭐 자오자 그런 질래로. 어딘데지 요래 된데 중요 요래서 그래.
And prior to 1959, Reting Rinpoche, the regent, was very close to the yogis in the vicinity around Lhasa, Drepung, particularly one famous one called Angong Rinpoche. And at once, he went to visit Angong Rinpoche, and Rinpoche said to Reting Rinpoche, "I'm so sorry, I have nothing to serve you. What would you like?" Because he was the guest. To which Reting Rinpoche replied, "I'd like some momos."
From Lhasa momo.
From Lhasa. To which Angong Rinpoche said, "Just wait a moment." And he went outside, and 5 minutes later, I came back with a plate of momos from Lhasa. So Philippa, someone who has been to Lhasa will know that from Drepung to Lhasa by car, maybe 1 hour, 30 minutes? At least more. Yeah. So this person did it in 5 minutes and brought back the momos. So these stories are quite, I would say, contemporary. Yeah.
다도저 셈기네 바래. 다 셈기네 바래. 제가 주둘라야디. 야 나라도 산제 주두. 나라도 곰 잡제 또 보통은 나라도 세들레 주두 땡초 그래. 주두.
These are all coming from one's mind, one's mental power. So if we are able to meditate and use our minds, we'll show all these in this life. If we become
so 계시셔디 드링하란저 좀된데기 아마라 가딘스웨 니모게 텐로 son장하란저 아스스세디게 파마 되절라 가딘스웨야게 지다 파마 데데니 이나니 지바 가르 로고 가즈치도나 체네 총산조이나 말람로 잡로와 지기나 야고요레스로.
Anyway, this day particularly, remembering the kindness of the mother, recalling the kindness of the mother of this life. If she's there, help her however way one can. If not, then make prayer. That's very important.
야, 다음 저 베지데 있으려면 말해.
Shall we look back at the text? What do you
Yeah.
think?
드림 베지.
Just a quick question.
Yeah.
You mentioned something about the Buddha's Ushnisha.
Yes, would you clarify that one, right?
You could please.
Yeah. Suktor se di la sumshi sasum badu dogre di tene la den chu sungre yangmena sangi ngosu pere.
단다디 산제 의족도네 숭고인라로 디 의족도네 숭고인스디 페제 셰다로 니여레 될라 좀된데 미율레데 의족도네 할로 숭고레세 직당 다 좀된데 할 숨주 조숨 코라라 니 의족도네 숭고레세지 될라 셰주미다 니여레스로.
There's two ways of looking at this. One is that the Buddha stayed in this world, but the crown protrusion went to that realm and did the very teaching. The second one is that Buddha himself actually went and taught.
다 단다 죽돌라야디 투모와잖아 따둑 쪽도서 생겨드래. 뒤제 투모 가라지 미 배워직다나.
So if us
생겨드래.
ordinary beings were to see someone with a crown protrusion, it would just look like a blob on the head.
그래. 다 나다 대운디 아니 미주의 우진 스틸 미주의 우진여로. 미주가 최선 거다 간다.
미주버스나.
자워링에는 미주바이와.
레on akshobia. But if you have tantric insights, you will see that amongst the 5 dhyana Buddhas, that it's akshobia at the crown.
단다 송제간보 운에 외와메디 제기여봐. 송제간보. 제가 외와메 우진데여봐. 어디래? 잔다 송제간보고 빠르나는 될 외와메도가.
Yeah.
그 우진 속도들 외와메 우지 리기다고 외와메로 자워링에나 제가 제네식 리기다고 돼 가라서나 자워메로. 제가 뭐마제
something about generosity and some.
송제간보 미망보게 제거데. 외와메 제거. 속도는 외와메 제거.
So King Dzongchen Gampo was known to have Amitabha on his crown because the Dhyana Buddha of the race, that's the race Buddha of Chenrezig. And King Dzongchen Gampo was said to be Chenrezig. And many people, when they saw King Dzongchen Gampo, would see Amitabha on crown.
되게 무실랑도 자갈래야 아니 곰자더니 룹제니를 와. 는 건서 ngudujagar komjam de ngudujagar do
yeah
ngudubdi laglungde june choranzo jeresik tene ragres ngudubdi an jeresik garasana ane phog je osonze gambo jeresik tesa dona an chorani ngudubjagres an kuni dubdodini an ja phena jagala ta jagane phelba chindo 친구 장ala ane sonze gambo ge chi namba dela de mejo 장마 준도 하죠 개와주 팀디 제로 팀 제네 ane 다 남발라 베 미카시 도와 지 믹던 선조로 라바제 선조로 팀 담보 쉐지 서인서 봐. 나 대근은 별 미드 상모 베 리다 잡더니 미베 로와도스 칼은 인기에서 말해. 네 작부체네 가시 작부 팀인데 제기서 봐. 아니 군인이 디체도 와 가서 대발로도 와. 다들 제네스 인사 말해. 대도 뒤도 인사래서 와. 군이 대발로도 와. 대발로도네 포스트도 아니 준이 가와도 연락돼. 인규선은 아니 자간의 용이 아자르던데 자간의 용이 제레스는 무드블랭가 레비스 이나야 아니 제 손생가 뭐 제레스 레스도 이나야 제레스 손생가 뭐 제레스시다 레면도 베드드 자레자 베드 타고제 도와 팀단 밀 각바제 락바제 된데 제레스 요 말레스 하고니 대월로도 오늘 버디 나 지난이 니쿠라 군이를 창로 시대도 군이 니쿠도 쇼괴 니세도 군이 자갈레도 자갈레 쇼괴 자갈레도 자갈레도네 군이 그냥 거래야 아니 세 립죽 진지레 미시민도 아니 개겐데 지난이 제레스를 대발로서 지난이 우도 매우 잘해 지난 제레스 대발로서 우도 상호 매우 잘서다 어디랬다 어디 닝저 어디 루주든데 닝저 어딘데 열다 Today
Today seems to be the day of stories because it's the day of miracles. There are some beautiful stories. This one, there were two Indian yogis, meditators that wanted to obtain siddhi, boons. So they heard that, there was a king in Tibet, Songtsen Gampo, who was, in fact, Chinrezig, that could bestow those siddhis, common siddhis. So they left for Tibet to go to take those teachings from Songtsen Gampo, or kind of attain the means. And then, but when they got to Lhasa, Tibet, because they were kind of like very clean yogis with tremendously good ethic and, non-harming and so forth, but the laws at the time in Tibet that King Songtsen Gampo seemed to be dispensing were really quite rough, But at that time, we remember Tibetans were quite untamed. So there was kind of quite a lot of harsh penalty, like people getting limbs cut off if they stole and so forth. And then Tibetans would hunt. And it seemed what the king was dispensing to these two was actually quite harsh judgment. So they thought, oh, that doesn't look like Chinrezig, that looks like a demon. Talking about King Songtsen Gampo. So they thought, well, what do we do? We'll go back to India. So they met an old man, and they talked to the old man, and the old man said to them, what are you doing here? And they said, oh, we've come to Tibet to get the siddhis from Songtsen Gampo, who's said to be Chinrezig, but he doesn't look like much of a siddhi dispenser. He's like the limbs are being cut off. So the old man, they took some chung and they fell asleep. And the next morning they found themselves in India with just a tiny piece of gold that they've gotten from their journey, which they showed to their teachers. And the teacher said to them, because you lost your faith in Chinrezig, you lost your siddhis.
Old man,
yeah, the old man was Chinrezig. I'm at a station. And the teacher said, because you lost your faith in Chinrezig, you lost your siddhis. So there's so many accounts like that. Should we try the text?
Jigdembe lamgu sadre, jigdembe lamgurwa. Anzo.
Waya.
Jigdembe lamgu de la ya da garersana jigdenle deve lamla asa samde shi da sumi shi kowe nyumju dan ku slarwa. Sidan jigden dan jigdenle deva sadi chawar khandes shagures tangil tekisu ngama jilaya la inde ti yangja this ti anjinganzo shengwe de.
Where we are, page 52, is the supramundane past, the fourth of our accumulations of what bodhisattvas must train in, of which are 9. And first we need to know, though, what means mundane and supramundane. That would be good.
Tadi jidanganzo pewe yigike chewinan jigden sade, nyogi jigden sade. Geji ge jigbe denjen de lan jigden se. Ti yige terangre, right? 다 초게 직진세야 베트 코든란다 신다지를 두고 열다. 초게 통달라.
Okay.
신다지 두고.
Right, now let's look at this word jigten, or worldly basis is the direct translation from the Tibetan. In the direct translation sense that there is this momentary disintegration, transitory basis. That's the definition for world in Tibetan. But it has a different meaning in the Dharma context.
다 최단 되어 있는 직den세야 돼. 먼저 직den스, 그래서는 먼저 단다 수수 교여로 봐.
Yeah.
수수 교그 먼저 류된데 류단 너지 직den다. 쭉 심지 류 풍부되게 직den 직배된진 직den 봐. 직den스인데 년부터게 코 매우서야 요랬다. 년부터게 코파 매우서야 예산 직배된진레스. 년부터게 고 좀이야 요레스 님베도 좀 매우서야 요레스 저는 직된서야 되라
From a dharmic perspective, though, this word jigten, or transitory basis, is referring to the body, the ordinary body we have attributed. And such a body has aggregates, and those aggregates can be destroyed when antidotes applied. So therefore, jigten, or transitory in that sense.
그래서 직된len 데라디다 님베도 지 방토에 면적이 최들 상매게 다 람도스 상마 박배주지 람디질란 직된len 데버 가서는 님베도 지 빠요 말다 상매 람디 빠요 말고 빠티 개와 공배도 되지 제면 산제지 살고 개와디 차도고 요라 님베도 지 매우서 돼요 말와 저선 직된len 데버레스다 님베도 지 방토에 요 말레스 어디 거든 데르다
Yeah, so then to go beyond that transitory basis is to go beyond any type of contaminated constraint vis-a-vis karma. And because once the Aryas have reached that stage of going beyond those constraints of the contaminated world, they can no longer return to it. They're on the way to Buddhahood, so therefore, supramundane.
그래서 파괴 람들라 돈이 웃음도 직된len 데와 돈이 웃음마도 그나 라마슈지 나랑서 되게서면 직된 바래 전에 람라 슈타네 초람단 조람데 근데 직된 바래 제가 조람 최저스 직된배 최고 최저 직된배 최데 간라다 직된배 최도 사요 말다 근데 계진 이발라 돈이 웃음도 되네 직된len 데와 차로 요래스디 거디 리그도 왔다가 그러나
And if we think about the Arya beings who've generated direct insight into reality, they are on that supermundane path. We ourselves, however, are said to be worldly or ordinary beings who are not, haven't seen insight into reality, who are not on the supermundane path. We are in fact in the mundane path. Now, when you go sequentially through the paths of accumulation and training, of course, you are traversing the various levels of the second Mahayana path of training. And once you reach the supreme, or the third level of the path of training, in the second moment after that peak, you traverse to the supramundane. That is the border. Path of seeing.
다 단단히 직딜렌 대베 람세인데 파괴주지 람데라 아니 삼대지 그생한서 삼대 당분이와 숨바셔야 바데 삼대 당분이와 숨바 셈데 제발라 템베 아니 파괴주지 람시체 아니 수미 나가다 남시대 제메 시제세 딩우실레 템베 람시체 예자성아 뇽죽 시제 아니 고베 뇽죽체 디젤라야 아니 직딜렌 대베 람구스야데 다들
Right, so these 9 supramundane paths for Aryas are termed in the following manner. The first 4 are, as we went through previously, the 4 concentrations, those meditative states, and what they entail sequentially, and then also those 4 formless realms, absorptions. What did we have? Kind of like limitless consciousness, nothingness, and then that final one, the great. So therefore, and then there's the one more of the absorption of cessation, so 4 and 4, and 1 make 9.
다딜라 디나네 다디 삼디시 수미시 딱히 생각만가서 계제망부터 사회장제 셰먹어체 다 고배념죽 라야딜라 아니 둡다스스 셰다면 년도에 대베룩 심잠바 텐주와 우마란 유베룩 체제다 고배념죽 라야딜라 니 셰다면 다 둡다스스 셰다면 다 유인자 데디직 셰샤나스로
We won't need to go into those 4 meditative states and 4 formless round absorptions. We have done so previously. But certainly, when we're looking at, the absorption of cessation, and they are set forth according to these different tenets, as you see there, A, B, C, and D. It's good to know.
다당보 지라메 룩시에운디 당에 지 단다 도도로 질랍시는 전서 코디아면으로 와. 지라마와게 시제 롱 텐시오 다당보 지라메 시에운디. 덕콩도사디 저나네 송요 그래. 뇽죽스야 뇽죽들라 아니 두시메베 뇽죽당 고베 뇽죽스야 지 니리게 오래스로 뇽죽스야들 아니 두시메베 뇽죽스야데 가라지 컨데지라고 오래스는 응을랑조 코아로 로드차 안데네 베자마 프티셰 프로샤너와
Yep.
두시메 뇽주세 가르스나 먼저 다 신의 톱네 삼디 당군이 왔음바 시와체 삼디 시와레드 삼디 시웨네가라 아니 소디 당 소와 당용으로 봐 당용 사바로 봐 당용 내가로 봐 이나 데나네 치라바체게 아니 수수 르르 믹베 소와단 두시 락바도 삼아 까샤고요 저는 두시 메오스데 르르 믹베 촌두라고 전에 요마레 초와단 두시 데디 직 야고르 데니 도자라서 초 촌두 촌이 땅은주 촌이 요마레 라고 삼아 까사바 인자 디까베 까자데라 기승한조 디 디나라야 타르바 아니 사제기 겨와가시 아니 타르바 징그레 랍송아 기승 오 디레다 디다 두시 술라믹베 두시 촌두제 메베 인자 아니 타워토버 더블 지어다 당아 타버탑샤 튕겨었다. 오, 당아 타버탑샤. 뒤시 메모 빠스디 간산데 뒤시 메모 뇽죽스는 딘데기 뇽죽딜라. 가려운 거서나 미과 술라 미제 아니 촌디라 바까베 뇽죽질라 뒤시 메베 뇽죽스거래. 근데 줄르드메 간산데라 뒤시 메모 빠스거래. 뒤시 메베 뇽죽스디 코주지 람라 코나디 그래. 어디 당부 뒤시 메모 뇽죽스야 돼. 코아드 내리지래 예스로.
So then looking at this first, we're going to look at the, what does it say, the first is the dushi meba, dushi, or what is called the person who meditates on non-discrimination. With the discrimination, let's say, of non-discrimination, here they've turned it discrimination annihilator, and then latterly we'll also look at the absorption of cessation. Firstly though, this first one, the discrimination of non-discrimination. We talk about these 4 levels of concentration. And on the 4th level of concentration, everyone, this is the bottom of 52 and then going on into 53 if you're listening and following. So we talked about...
If you no follow, you are sleeping, okay.
The stories have stopped now.
Yeah, if you know follow, we want to start a story, isn't it?
So at that 4th level of concentration, the mind has reached a state of neutrality, and that the gross feelings and discriminations have ceased, certainly in dependence on the body. There's no way these gross sensations or feelings can manifest. There's no gross feeling of good or bad. So because that is the case, there can be a danger there, as we mentioned previously, that you could mistake that absorption or concentration for liberation. But because you still have this gross underlying form or clinging to it, you haven't vanquished it, it is a danger there. But so what we're saying is you can A2 on page 53, you can break it down into the person who is the one who meditates on the non-discrimination, and then the path itself, which is what you're manifesting in your mind. So this is what we need to know.
아니 지금 저기 생 디도 망보 쉬어지 간저 술라데네 기 요라 기도 알아
Yeah.
안저 만차 당보 디도 망보지 술라데네 지고다 차두 차베 동에 또두 또베 동에 아니 르 야고 메베 동에 야고에 지 다데 르르미베 디도 망보 쉬어지 디 동에 망보 쉬어지 타용도 알아
Yeah.
아 르르미베 초와다 디시춘에 메나 아니 디 르르미베 디도 동에 디게 춘에 요 말아 메베 인상 시버러지 내가 시버지 열어 다다당 알라 타버터샤 태양가 열어 그런저 디시티상 신고에 디 개점으로해서
It is in dependence on the body primarily, isn't it, that we experience sensations of pleasure or pain. Well, it's a body that feels hot or cold and so forth, or it's a body that discriminates ugly or attractive. And what that does is induce certain sorts of feelings that are suffering in nature. But if there are none of those gross perceptions coming in the mind, then that suffering has abated. But it would be a mistake to mistake that temporal abating of the suffering gross levels of feelings and sensations for liberation. We have to mark here.
세상 단다디 다 자외나래 내라고다 두시 매바 와디시 매바심다 심중나스지 두시 매바 와디 다망아서 저와다 윤도르고 인다 데 두시 매바 와디시에서 두시 매바 와디 매바심다 심중나스되네 코 개주 망부시에요레스 두시 매바 바텔라 아니 당무딜라 sabject edition 두시 매바와다 두시 매바 뇽주다 고베 뇽주 셰바다
아, somewhat right.
다 당부 두시 매바 빠딜라 아니 셰운디 비제드나 요나고 마압지로셔네 왜요.
So first we're going to look at these three divisions on page 53. And the first one we're talking about is the person. There are three divisions, 1, 2, and 3. So the first one is the person who's doing the meditation. The second one is the type of absorption there. And then finally, the absorption of cessation. So that first one, what it says initially is that this person possesses many attributes.
Yep.
What it's saying is such a person, the person that is doing the meditation on lack of discrimination, has many attributes. For example, the first attribute is a troublemaker because it is self-sufficient, substantially existent.
저 간사란제드베 제유사디 데스 로가체오레스 간다 간사는 데란제드베 제유레스 란제드베 제유기 다 말해서 당무두스 제와시샤네 야오면 되려 세부차기도.
So therefore we have to be careful here because we can talk about self-sufficient, substantially existent in general, but we can affix it to the person. So whether we are affixing it to the person or not, there's a difference there. We should know.
다디 갈라고서나 제유당 다유스 니체요 당일 리싱으로 당원들아.
So what we can talk about is this substantial existence and then the label given to it, or the label upon which it depends.
답변은 저 다유스디 탭디 다유레스로 탭디 다유레스 지라말라고 왔다. 다유임에 김제 가서나 먼저 탭심나라 샤발라 아니 되게 바과당 대슈구당 입디게디 로르샤 아니 탭싱이 제일 로르샤르게로 먼저 저단 탭루이 차올라 최신 가서 탭이 입디 탭마르와 되게 섭다디 탭마르와 되게 바과디 탭마르와 저단 딜루이디 차네 탭루이 차거도 와 디나시 큐루이디 차디 최신 루이 차올라 뜨거나 아니 다유 차로고요 레스 디샤고레스.
This first level of being dependent, being dependent as a label to, that illustrates the thing. So if we look at book, the book is made up of these various things like the cover and the print and so forth, and the shape. But we know that the book is not its shape or its cover or its pages. But if we say that the book, is dependent on those, and that's that first level of dependence.
다 간산들 당당에 탭시오는 신 다유직나 간산 제유직 니 요래라고 했다.
A person also has, two levels. There's the basis upon which you label the person, and then there's the person's substance. There are two. Niente concetti che io c'è tu che bes.
제도.
Yeah, they can.
제도. 대간서 정말 상당한데 여 빼나. 만아저 자신다 아든 라비너로. 아니 서테데지 뭐 아자시 미글샤인 거다. 입디. 제가 디타이에 들어와. 디타이에
Yeah, when we think Jacinda Ardern, the shape of her appears to mind. That's the first.
Sotas.
Yeah, and the teeth. Yeah. So that's that first level. Suitable to be known as that. Jacinda Ardern. By the form. So maybe now you speak English.
네, 먼저 미상말을 시작했다. 미지르지한데.
Oh yeah, we all have a form. we all have a form that we're known by.
다 뭐지 그 심디 다 제유래스다.
But Jacinda Ardern's mind is the substantial level.
그래서 딜루이 자월 추줄루이 자 되고요 말다.
Now that substantial aspect of the person doesn't depend
다디 단다디
on the form and so
지라멜라고
forth.
열다로.
Yeah, remember this is the view of the Shravaka, the hearer.
자 가로서는 다 먼저 디나시 다디 수르스나 다당 알아서 수술을 수배자더라.
Yeah.
수술을 수배자나 빼나 나게 나타요데 저 잠바타지 라위나 네 민다샤진 들어와 당 예수 셈데 마란을 로이데 녜게 지 강발라버라고 다 찍로이 차한데 나타요데 로이 차르고 열어라 나타요데 체 당에 셈데 나랑 로이자 녜 풍보다데 또 말 나랑 로이랑랑 샤투고 열어 제단 제유세 딜라고 orda.
So let's get down to this meaning of substantially existent by applying the reasoning to ourselves individually. So my name is Jampatachan, and you know I have my teeth are like this.
My father all the time teasing me. I don't know, man. Me too like that because I pushing my tongue, pushing like that when I was young. And father also don't do that, and then you become the ape like so intention you
like an ape.
ape like ape chagre la ko chime
soron
paja anzo soron paja je pakwa so na chagre la pakwa so na chagre so
like a pig's teeth.
Yeah, pakwa so de inde jang de yorsto look so de ta so look so de spare wa look so de ya wo sheep truth is very nice. Pig truth is no good. no nice. Wear it out like that.
So there's a basis upon which you know me, Jampatachan, my body and limbs and so forth. But then there is another a substantial part of my aggregates, my mind, which is in no way dependent on those other parts.
This sometimes
it is good to think in this way.
당부 도저 신고래. there's 마시나나 쳐 찍을 때네 따셔야지. 한다 따셔야지. 르파 따셔 유선데 디베 지라면 라야 되는 거 당부 공부 당부 좀 된데 이거 내 당부를 주송 거라 봐. 그래서 삼로 당고 그래서
These are very good points for us to go through to understand this notion of other dependence, how things depend on their nominations. I mean, why did Lord Buddha teach initially for these Shravakas this mode of dependence?
당부 공부직 잡디 당부 탭스 도도지 요래라와.
Yeah.
말은 탭데 루이차 최신 루이차 또 그래랍디. 데 문에로 왔다 가서 당부 탭데 미국도 통데 아니 상단데 대그 입다 빠과디 열로 사용하더라. 안디 제데 탭스야들 리도. 대나시 미직 당부 오시는데 아니 미디 춘의 통 많이 나나 안 가서 미디 따다 루이를 쇼트고야 말해. 왜 미직 다지 잠지 미시지. 미디 거스 통용데 아니 직 통나 안 산이들라. 안 존슨이라고 지나. 존슨데 배나가서 네 네바 존라고 지나. 뭐만 땅에 단도 상단데 아니 고 감보라고 지 가두이나 가두이네 디 닥터 스탄지 돈이지. 라 돈데 내가 돈데 미그날 삼는 샤기도. 근데 그 다요데 샤기 여러 하시나. 디가나저 처에 나라. 다 생기 차다 나라. 딱다 요르스. 디 ngösung야 레 ngösung. 디 ngösung 토이나 마마마 때네. 직직로유체 때네 따사야데 마 타니르 도레스로.
Yeah, so this notion of being able to understand phenomena, first of all, from their reference level. When you look at a book, and Buddha would have said, yeah, well, what is the book? The book has to depend on these outer things as we use it as a reference. So you have an image of that when you close your eyes. What is book? And it's the same. You have it. If you haven't met someone, let's say John, someone will say, oh, John looks like this. But until you actually meet them and have that reference upon which you label, you won't know who John is. That happened to me. So now when I hear the tractor going, I know what it's like and I know it's him. So in this life then, it's important to recognize the understanding of basis and label by this means of dependence.
다드네 나이주지 시와테 녀와데데 수수냠녀다니 람상 롤 샤용도라 알아 직 셈바지우도 셈바지우미도 셈로직 튕게도 튕게미도 사야도 텔라 인지민지 직 최신다직 뜨고문다 롤 샤고문다 고 녀에도 야 샤용도라
And the fact that my mind has this quality of being able to experience feelings happy and sad is not dependent on other phenomena for that to be the case. The mind can just know those. Yeah, you know from your experience, that consciousness faculty of experience.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just to clarify, when you say reference, is that the same as basis?
Yeah, like a nominative basis. Okay. Yeah. I guess like dayu, right? Dayu. Yeah. We have the nominative word person, but then you have the substance, the illustration of the person. They're different. Yeah, I have two people. I have like the label of my name, but also I have a substantial person as well. Now we can bring it back to the text. Our meditator here, the one who's meditating on non-discrimination, it has this quality of self-sufficiency because the grosser attributes of the physical are not appearing. In equipoise. Yeah, only that consciousness will be in equipoise, right? So not depending on the form, therefore self-sufficient. Yeah. Yeah, because the form and everything that's concomitant with experiencing that form by way of perception has ceased. Only consciousness at this point is perceiving. And as it says here, exactly, lacks manifest minds and mental factors. Right. So now in this mode of meditation, what's happening for the person, the coarse concomitants upon the bodily aggregates are stopped, isn't it? That's the basis upon which stopping happens. Right, so now the second one then, the second one, the absorption with discrimination, well, the first one is the result of the second, if you get it, because you have to manifest the mental state to abate the gross bodily dependence. Shipa. So that's why it goes on to say, self-sufficient stops all coarse commitments upon the bodily aggregates is the fruitional result of the absorption without discrimination. Yeah, so the person themselves are the result of the fourth level concentration. Yeah, so just to know that first level of recognizing the person, what that person entails in the non-discriminatory sense. Bena shine top thousand samde tanguni was sumba shiva bet jobu shivji topu yor tuzu shira gogo mar nyamsha tunjing na la je dogo yor je yundu zangala tindege jiglula migbe chodu jime de ne bede shiva da shivja yor ba da emotion menjo semla jik chodu ni gawo yime de kanande me dugu yime kanande je me du zang ne tabo top에서 yor ba 아니 딜라 투제 타버 투네다 타버 톱샤 세 냥가 요래 제가 딜 하든데 데다 딜라 힌두게 미망버지게 데 딜라에다 타버 투디 타버레 테
안데 뇽적데 누바디 냠로데 아니 야다운데 다 타와민도 다 타와요 말했을 때네 타와를 구바다 한 타와 구바다 바디 록다시 대왕이 냐월 지로 거다 어디 레스제네 레사가 여러다 인연가 챵 버려 장한저디 시고야도 개좀 버렸어.
So it is in dependence on a gross bodily form as one's focal object that you are ceasing gross feeling and discrimination. And there the danger of mistaking it for liberation. Well, of course, comes in because having accomplished calm abiding, these different states of concentration, 1, 2, 3, 4, are actually accomplished quite quickly, even in 1 or 2 meditative settings, in fact. And within that fourth level, the emotions, like, vast, tremendous joy or tremendous, extremely the opposite, displeasure, they're abated so much that it is quite a sensation of serenity and liberation. And there is the possibility of mistaking it as liberation, which some of the Hindu practitioners may have done. Because what's happened is when the karma runs out to keep meditating, they have already mistaken it for liberation. And then they think, oh, well, perhaps liberation doesn't exist. They then generate a wrong view and go to the hells. So it is a point to be aware of. We'll dedicate.
Page 31 for the short mandala.
Oji Jushi Meta Eva Shikmede and Sangye Shingi Mete
Oye
Nanda Shingla Kuse Arabdeshi
Naga Chimbe Choju Kevada Losang Tembe Drome Sasungi Drove Muse Tato Neko Ururane Mendela Kamdiya Tayami.
Page 33, prayers of dedication. Due to the merit of these
virtuous actions, may I quickly attain the state of a Guru Buddha,
and may all living beings
for that exception and for that enlightened state. May the supreme jewel bodhicitta that has not arisen arise and grow.
And may that which has arisen not diminish but increase. Whatever slight positive potential I may have created by paying homage,
offering and acknowledging my faults.
rejoicing in the request of I dedicate all these roots of virtue for the dedication of
Praised as the best by the victorious ones thus gone of the 3 times.
so that I might perform the miracle life sacrifice deeds. May the King of Dharma Sanghapa's way of Dharma practice flourish. May the omens of obstacles be pacified, and all the conducive circumstances be complete. The fulfilling joy, source of every single benefit and happiness in this world, to the comparably kind Tenzin Gyatso, may all your holy wishes be spontaneously fulfilled. Savior of the snowland teachings and
My
transfer
great beings, who makes extremely clear the path that is the unification of emptiness and compassion.
to the lotus holder Tenzin Gyatso I beseech, may all your holy wishes be spontaneously fulfilled. You who uphold the subduous moral way, who serve as the bountiful bearer of all,
Sustaining, preserving, and spreading amongst the monks victorious doctrine, who masterfully accomplished magnificent prayers honoring the 3 jewels.
Savior of
Myself and others, your disciples, please live long, by relying on the true accumulations of myself and others in the 3 times.
May the teachings of the conqueror Losong Drapa
Blaze for a long time.
Daddy.